Malebo, welcome to Inside Modern Wellness podcast. So this is a podcast where we try and bring interesting issues around health and wellness. The hope is that in as much as we kind of entertain people, but we also educate people around different interesting aspects of wellness. I love your work in mental wellness.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners.
Okay, so firstly, very honored to be here, and I think you're one of the people that really have taken the time to understand what I do. So professionally, I'm a licensed counselor, and I specialize in mental health. But at the same time, I advocate for mental health. So I also have my own content that I create just to spread awareness, educate people, inform people, and just deal with a lot of issues that we are finding difficult on a daily basis as individuals. So that's what I do.
I love it, man. I love it. Where are you based, Malebo? Where's your practice? Where are you currently based in terms of counseling? If I want to come for counseling from you, where do I find you?
So currently I am based in Bryanston, but I am a freelancer. So I freelance, I work online most of the time. If you want to contact me, you can just search for my name and all the details will come up because sometimes some clients feel more comfortable during, for example, the weekend or maybe at a time that is not suitable for them to come to the practice. So they just prefer to have an online session and contact me anytime. So I'm very flexible at the moment.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. So I could have a counseling session with you via Zoom, for example. I can have, that's
Yes.
perfect. So today, why today's session is particularly interesting. Having started the spas and gotten into the spa business, we've managed to sort of have a working relationship with an aesthetic doctor who happens to be a plastic surgeon.
Yes.
And for the longest time in my naivety, for me, anything aesthetic sounded like something vain. You know, I always thought people that went for plastic surgery or did all this, aesthetic treatments, it's more got to do with your vanity. You know, I believed in, you should age with grace and just
Yes.
look your age and all that stuff. But after interacting with the doctor, one of the most interesting aspects of it that I realized that I was naive to was how it makes people feel. And when I contacted you the other day, I thought, I know someone who understands very complex mental wellness issues. And I want us to come and just break down what it means to look after your aesthetics, but not just as I'm looking good, but just
Exactly.
as what it does for your mental wellness. And if there's anyone that can really break it down well, and that is you. But maybe before we start, mental wellness is something that is a phrase we throw around a lot nowadays.
Absolutely.
But what would you define mental wellness as? An expert, what would you define mental wellness as?
Okay. So I always say that mental wellness can be compared to your physical wellness. So if you just imagine your body and what is on the outside, and of course what is in the inside. But when it comes to mental wellness, it's the part of your body that is in the inside. So you don't see it, you cannot touch it, you cannot adjust it because it's inside. So what you do or how you connect with it is through your emotions, it is through your thoughts. And from that point onwards, you can be able to see or figure out what is it that you need to adjust. You can be able to figure out why something is wrong and how you can go about it. So it's that part of you that is in the inside and you can't access it as what you can on the outside. So that's how I would describe it.
We live in a world of one pill fixes all.
Yes.
What is that pill for mental wellness?
I think communication.
Yes.
communication is that pill. And it can be communication with yourself, it can be communication with others, but also communication with yourself is reflected in the communication with others. So it's not like you'll just wake up in the morning and decide to communicate with another person. It shows that, in fact, you've communicated with yourself prior to talking to another person. So communication is that pill for mental wellness.
So you mentioned something interesting, which is communication with yourself.
Yes.
Is communication with yourself then reflected in your physical aesthetics?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I believe that your physical aesthetics can tell the world where you are. It can also tell the world where you've been and where you're going. So it's like a timeline. It's like a timeline of where you are, where you're going, where you've been. And what I mean by that is, essentially, it goes back to your values, whether we like it or
Whether we
not.
like it or not, yeah.
You know, your values, what you stand for, what you believe in, what drives you. We can try to ignore and say, well, you know, how you look doesn't define that, but that's the first thing that people see.
Yes.
That's the first thing that people see, and people will then begin to make assumptions based on their own communication or their own thoughts or their own beliefs. But it's an assumption at the end of the day. So what matters is, are you communicating your truth? That's what matters at the end of the day.
I love what you say. There's a particular saying that people like to throw around, which is you mustn't look like your problems.
Yes.
It is something that, as a mental wellness person, you would advise someone to have some form of a mask that they wear, whether is it makeup, whether is it, I know a lot of the time, I've been working in the gym business for a long time, and I know a lot of the time, the biggest bodybuilders that you look at and think, oh, this person is massive, is muscular, deep down, they suffer from such an inferiority complex, and they continuously pursue this massive muscle size because having that kind of makes them feel better about themselves. But you find that when they get to one point, they try and get to the next point. So they're never satisfied because there's something inside that, despite getting there, you really, once you think you are where you wanted to be, you don't feel like you are there, and you want to pursue the next thing.
So I really think that that's actually, you know, that this took me back, Billy, to when I first heard that, you know, like, you mustn't look like your problems, you know, and I felt very uncomfortable about that, because I thought, well, if you don't look like your problems, what if you need help? What if you need help? And the only way for you to receive that help is to look like your problems. And that is a personal opinion. But if I think of myself as a mental health coach or a counselor, I really think this is something that is quite dangerous, because if you begin to do that, as you've explained with, you know, people that train and so on, and bodybuilders, if you do that, you are just sweeping things under the carpet, and you just have this band-aid that is your body or your appearance. So you never really get to deal with anything, but you try to do more and more and more and more. And it makes the situation worse. You'll never ever be satisfied, because you're not dealing, you're just avoiding the problems.
Okay. And in our society, though, is it safe for someone to come out and look like their problems? And how do we, if it is safe, great. But if it's not safe, how do we then build societies where it is safe to not be okay? Because a lot of people go through stuff and they wrap this band-aid for a long time. And then one day you wake up and you hear someone has done this to themselves. And you'll be like, but we were smiling and talking yesterday. What happened? We were having beers together last night. What happened? You know?
Yes.
How do we build societies that allow people to really to really express themselves fully and not fear that, if I'm down and I look down, my society might reject me because no one wants to deal with someone who brings the so-called negative vibes to an environment.
That's a really good question. So, funny enough, yesterday I was talking to someone about how we are a codependent society.
Yeah.
So, what it also means when it comes to codependency doesn't necessarily mean to another person, but to things. We attach ourselves to so many things. So, I think in this society, we need to understand roles and role playing. The fact that when you go to work, you're an employee. When you are with, a friend, you're a friend. And when you are in a particular environment, you have to play a particular role. And that has nothing to do with who you are. Those things form part of who you are, but they are not you. So I think that also this connects to boundaries, because when you are codependent or when you've attached yourself to things and you think they are your identity, then you don't have boundaries. Because if you had boundaries, you'd say, okay, Billy's my colleague. I'm going to get to work, do the work, and ask him if he has a few minutes so that I can tell him about whatever it is that I'm going through, and just to hear what he'll say. But I will not do it while I'm at work, while I'm supposed to be a professional someone and play a particular role. So when you have boundaries, you are able to say, okay, when is the best time for me to show you what I'm going through? And when is it not the best time to do that?
Yeah. Interesting. I'm gonna break it. I'm gonna break it down or regress it a little bit, and I want us to look at what aesthetic means at different stages of human development. So I'm a father to kids. I've got one preteen son. I've got a teenage daughter. I've got a 6-year-old in grade 1. Starting with the little kids, I've noticed that in a lot of our circles, little young kids are conscientized around how they look. They're conscientized in how they look in the sense that I've seen kids with weaves, like with literally like a wig, like some form of wigs or some form of really serious hairstyle. I mean,
Exactly.
I have my kids do like braids or whatever, but that's very common, colorful braids on my little one. But I've seen 6, 7-year-olds with really hectic hairstyles. At one time, I saw a 7-year-old with some form of makeup, and
Wow.
very conscious about where they're playing, very conscious about what they're touching. And yet, I'm the parent that says, when I come to fetch my daughter from school, I expect everything to be a mess because I'm
Listen.
expecting them to be playing. And,
Yes.
what is the best way for parents to go around the issue of conscientizing their kids around the aesthetics, around looking good, but at the same time allow the little kids, especially let's say maybe they from 3 years, kids are more when are kids more conscious of themselves? 4 years old, 4 years, maybe
4 or
to
5.
4 or 5, maybe to about 10. What would be the best approach around conscientizing your kids to be neat and look good, but still go play and get dirty and be okay with that? Because I felt that excessively sort of trying to put kids together and look like this all the time eventually might make the kid develop a certain
Absolutely.
a certain negative connotation around that as they become an adult. What's your take on that part?
So I think first and foremost is the fact that parents are not conscious about the development of their kids, as you've stated as well. So we need to understand that there's a phase of development where kids begin to identify themselves as female and as male. And if there are disruptions in that phase, then it can create exactly what you said, a lot of issues going forward. So firstly, what parents need to do, or the society needs to do, is help children identify their bodies and the importance of taking care of their bodies, and why it's important to take a bath, why it's important to be clean and neat and wash your hands before you eat, and so on. When we start with the basics of why it's important to take care of yourself, then when they reach a particular stage, they'll be able to determine their own aesthetic, what is aesthetically pleasing for them or what is not. So in essence, I really think that parents should emphasize taking care of yourself, but not introducing what is aesthetically pleasing and what is not aesthetically pleasing. And we need to understand that by the age of 10, that's when a child begins to be conscious. Oh, I'm a boy, and I usually get a haircut to keep my hair clean. I have to cut my nails. Oh, I'm a girl. I need to, do this and that. So from 4 up to 10, they are still trying to explore. They're still trying to figure themselves out. They don't know anything about aesthetics. But what we can slowly introduce is taking care of your body, being healthy. And they should be able to see that from the parents as well. Let's wash our hands together before we eat. Let's do this and let's do that. So nothing is concrete yet in their development until 10.
I love that. Little girls love fairies and unicorns. Little boys think they're superheroes. Does the TV that we expose our kids, the content that we feed them out there at that age group, does it influence how they eventually see themselves? Does exposure to superheroes make them feel good about themselves, make them want to look in such a certain way? What is wanting to look like? Little girls love unicorns and fairies, and they're mystical creatures. They'll probably never see them. Does that influence how they eventually view themselves?
Absolutely, but it becomes a little bit of a crisis. So in the stages of development, especially with children, we have a crisis that can be identified for those children that have difficulties, associating themselves with those characters, for example. So I think, Billy, it's a 50-50. Because if you're a parent and your kids love superheroes and all of that, that is great, but you need to be able to look at their thought patterns and the things that they express and the things that they do. Is it somehow making them feel like maybe other kids are not, at the same level as they are? So if a kid is imagining himself as Superman and is at school playing and maybe it's becoming rough, and handling other kids in a very rough way that makes them to become injured, for example, then we need to come back and just help your child to remember that, okay, this is a character that you see on TV, you love this character, it's good. But when you're at school with other children, you are a Sipo or you are Tabang, and that's it. So that's also how we start to learn boundaries. And we identify, okay, this is where I get to be in character as Superman and Batman when I play with my friends and we have all these costumes and all these toys. But when I'm at school playing with other kids, eating lunch, I need to eat lunch and enjoy that moment.
Interesting. I like how you've put it. Right. Let's move on then to the. Let's go straight to the teenagers. I think.
Yes.
Okay. Teenagers. How do you and with teenagers it becomes complex because your body is changing. You're starting to see that people notice you in some cases. You become more conscious about how you look. You're getting pimples for some people. You're getting acne.
Yes.
You're getting all these changes that have, make you generally uncomfortable. How do we coach teenagers around aesthetic and mental wellness? How do you still teach them to value their aesthetics, value how they look, but at the same time, in a very safe space for their minds.
That's a really difficult one because in this world of social media,
Yes.
it is, incredibly challenging.
Yes.
But firstly, teenagers are young adults. So when we become teenagers, that means we've gone through the stages that we've just described right now.
Yeah.
That means you know how to take care of yourself.
Yes.
That means that you can now identify with your body.
Absolutely.
So what teenagers need to be reminded is, of course, the fact that they are still developing. They are young adults. They've just started, but they're still in development. So things can change. A lot of things will, in fact, change. And with teenagers, you have to balance the practical with the theory. So you can't preach to a teenage girl, about body positivity, and this is what you need to do, and this is what you don't need to do. It's not necessary for you. You need to be practical about it. So with teenagers, it's like we need to show them what happens. They need to see the reality of what happens if I decide to make changes, permanent changes on my body right now. What happens 20 years later? What happens 10 years later? What happens if I wait for a particular age where I'm more mature and I've developed quite well, and I begin to consult and explore. So exploration is how you empower teenagers. You allow them to explore these topics. You have conversations with them. Let's look at this person A. Person A did a BBL at 18 years old, and now she's 35 years old. What are the consequences? How is she feeling? What about the one who did a BBL at 35 years old? So there's that practical element to it with teenagers. You need to be realistic, but at the same time, have these conversations with them and show them both sides. Be honest.
But you see, our teenagers growing up in the age of social media. And almost all of them are on TikTok. And TikTok is a whole universe. I've recently started going on TikTok just to see what goes on, and there's like TikTok for everything. There's a fitness TikTok, there's a beauty TikTok, and our teenagers now have access to influencers from everywhere in the world. So the way that they see the world is a little bit different, and sometimes they look at what they see on social media, and they look at themselves and they see discrepancies in themselves, and it literally can influence or affect how they see themselves. How do we protect them from that? How do we protect them from today's world, particularly where they literally access this content that has such an implication on how they see themselves?
That's a good point. So I think firstly, let's talk about the protection. We can't really protect them, but we need to have an open conversations with teenagers. We need to, I believe I have a problem with people or parents or adults that will say, teenagers are, they're just teenagers, let them be. We can't let them be because they are the future generation. So we need to create an open conversation. We need to be able to have teenagers that can sit down with their mom or dad and ask them these questions. This is what I'm seeing, even share. This is what I'm seeing on TikTok. And I want this. I also want to look this good. What do you think? What is your view? And you will not be imposing anything, but you'll be sharing the consequences, the pros and cons, and what you think. And believe me, when a teenager is alone, she or he's going to process everything that you've said, everything that you've shared. And then from that point onwards, they begin to realize that, oh, okay, no, I don't think I'm ready for this. Because I think we also have an expectation in society that teenagers need to respond like 5, 6, 10-year-olds.
Absolutely.
And immediately say, no, I'm not going to do it. No.
They're experimenting. They're busy.
Exactly.
They're interested in things.
So just like an adult you need to give them the time and space to go think about
Yeah.
it alone,
Yeah.
reflect about it alone, and then come back. Even have a deadline. You can even say something like, you know what, I'll give you a week to
Yeah.
think about it. Let's come back.
And
Let's
yeah.
summarize,
Yeah.
and let's reflect. Let's see what you think.
Interesting. How do we then structure the conversations such that the teenager understands that their aesthetics, the most important part about their aesthetics, is not about what the handsome boy in the schoolyard or the pretty girl in the schoolyard thinks about how they look, but rather what they think about themselves? How do you structure that conversation with them to help them understand that part? Because I think a lot of teenagers are about impression of the people around you, because it means so much for my environment to approve me, to make me be the person at the center of attention. So the approval of others is an important thing for them. So how do you have that conversation to say, your approval should start from you approving yourself and being happy with yourself, and before everyone else approves you? Because what if tomorrow they don't approve you? What's going to happen? Are you going to then fall apart, or are you going to do the next thing to try and get that approval? How do you work that conversation with teenagers around their aesthetics?
So I think one of the most powerful things you
Yeah.
can do is you need to put yourself or include yourself in those group of people that your teenager feels like they have a particular aesthetic and look, and I need to fit in, and I need to be part of it, and I need to create an impression just like those. You need to imagine that you're also one of those people.
Yeah.
And how do we imagine? We share our experiences.
Yes.
So for example, if you have a teenage boy or teenage girl, and you begin to tell them what you went through, you begin to share. And if you have pictures, for example, when you were a teenager, and you can remember very well your insecurities and who you wanted to be. If it's even better when you have like a celebrity or a famous person that you've always looked up to and you admired during your time, and you're able to say, listen, I wanted to look like this guy. I wanted to look like this guy, and I would get teased. I would
Yes.
feel this way. I would feel that way. And this will open up more questions, because he will probably say to you, so what did you do about it? Did you want to change? No, I couldn't do anything about it because 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
How do you feel now? Do you regret it? Do you feel like you still need to do? So we need to be as practical as possible. Share your own experiences and show them that you were once in their shoes.
That's true. Yeah. But what if you're not the one that they're looking at? Because sometimes I look at myself, and sometimes I feel my kids look at dad and like, this guy is just lame. and I'm not the person that they look up to, because they're exposed to so much. So one of the things that I try and do with the kids is that I try and expose them to as much stuff as possible, because I don't, I suppose in our generation of parents has changed from our generation of
Absolutely.
parents. Our parents were the all knowing. I think we, as our generation, we now are okay with exposing our kids to other
Yes.
things, because we think that they can learn other things from somewhere. But how do I then have that conversation if my son is looking at someone that they saw on TikTok and they think, oh man, I want to be this guy? And I have that conversation and say, but you see, I did this. Do you then need to then have role models that are in line with him? Do you need to find people around, people that are out there online that can influence him, that you think he might be interested in? How do you navigate that space?
Exactly. So it goes back to the thought processing. I think firstly, we need to highlight the fact that we don't know this person.
Yes.
We don't know what he thinks. We don't know if he has a mom or dad. We don't know anything about that. So we have to have a limit or a balance. Yes, you acknowledge the fact that you like the way that he looks, and I'm sure you want to look that way.
Yes.
But we don't know why he
Like
looks
I like
that way.
I like that. I like that.
And maybe he can even ask you and say, Dad, but why do you look this way? And then you'll be able to say, well, I exercise, I do this, I do that. You know, this is how I look. And these are my genes, my parents, my mom, my dad. This is how they look. We have a similar skin color. We have a similar shape. We have this. So we need to try and make them realize that I like this person, but I don't really know
Them
much
that
about this
much.
person. So I'm limited in terms of
Yes.
how much, you know, I can regard them as my role model.
I love that. I love that because then what you're saying to me is that then as we bring up our kids, we should start early on showing them the
Yes.
fuller picture of people.
Yes.
That humans are not just this one dimension that you see on TikTok. There's also these other things about people that you
Exactly.
may not be aware of. So you're following this one dimension, but there's other parts about this person that you may not know.
Yes.
In as much as I may not
Yes.
be a movie star and look like Tom Cruise, but there's other things about me that are also positive that you know, which may not be like Tom Cruise, but they're also something to look up to.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Exactly.
I like that. I like that
Exactly.
because I feel kids are growing up in there. We actually don't understand the world that we are bringing up kids nowadays because
Yes.
everything is changing so fast. And if you're a parent and you are not trying to keep abreast with so many things, literally your kids could have a completely different life than you as the parent.
Exactly.
And you'll literally be surprised, like the president who was always surprised that, oh, I didn't know this is happening. So you'll be surprised what your kids do. And it's important then as a parent to always then see what your kids are up to and try and learn. Like I'm going on TikTok just to learn and see what actually goes on here.
Yes.
And just
yes.
to see what people get up to. And then that's where I can understand better. Because I don't believe in stopping my kids from exposing themselves to certain things, but I think they should be able to control it. If they lose control of it, if then you're no longer doing your homework because you're on TikTok, then that's a problem.
Exactly.
But if you do your schoolwork and do your house chores and then you go chill and do your TikTok, perfect. I'm happy with that. I believe they need to be exposed to as much stuff as possible. I like that. Now let's go to adults. Adults are very interesting. Adult aesthetics is very, very interesting. I want to start with something that I was very conflicted on, and it is body positivity around obesity and and weight loss. So anyway, so there's this groups of people. Most of the time it's ladies, but there's some men as well.
Yes.
And they have formed these movements, especially online, around positivity around obese people. My trained exercise scientist says when you see somebody that has obesity issues, you should potentially encourage them to exercise, eat healthy, do this and that. You may not lose all the weight or whatever, but you want to live a healthier lifestyle.
Exactly.
But then there's this people that form those movements around body positivity where they were like, you know what, we want to live our life as fully as we can. We want to just enjoy ourselves. We're happy with our bodies. We are happy with looking like this. How do you navigate that part as a wellness expert? Because you know very well that eventually a lifestyle that doesn't sort of look after your physical health will eventually lead to complete lack of wellness in other aspects as well.
Absolutely.
How do you navigate that as a wellness person? I mean, as a mental wellness person?
So you said actually two very important things about the health.
Yes.
We need to encourage weight loss because the health is very important. So I think that's the core of this, you know, issue, which is health.
Yes.
So firstly, when I'm dealing with a person that is a client that is having issues with their body, the question is, do you feel healthy? Do you feel like you're at health? There's a health risk, you know, maybe, things to do with blood pressure and so on, your immune system, so many systems in your
Aspects.
body
Yeah.
that could be bothering. Are you bothered by those aspects? If it's a yes, then of course, this is the route that this person will be encouraged to take. They need to take that route because now there's a health threatening issue that could possibly shorten that person's life. So we need to preserve
Yes.
the life.
Okay.
So this means that this person needs to do something about that.
Okay.
But now, when it comes to body positivity, I don't think they tackle that part. I don't think, I believe they are able to determine whether there are a group of women and men that have health issues that are bothering them, that are at risk. And then there are a group of men and women that are trying to feel like they're part of this society, to feel like they fit in, because society says they do not fit in. So can we distinguish that? Because if you don't have any health issues, any life-threatening issues that are affecting you on a daily basis, affecting your breathing, affecting every system in your body, then you should just be focused on taking care of yourself, just like any other person. Does it mean 10 push-ups once a month? We don't know. You get to create and design your own fitness plan. Some people don't have time to exercise and they're okay. And their lives are not threatened. So we need to approach this body positivity from a health, life-threatening perspective, because we have people that are saying, I just want to fit in because I've been teased, about my body, but I'm perfectly fine. And if you look genetically, maybe the mom or the dad, people within that bloodline have the same shape, have the same structure.
Yes.
So we need to consider that. Genes, we need to consider, are you at health risk? Do you have a health risk? Is something threatening you in terms of your body, in terms of your health? Or are you just doing it because you want to fit in?
Yeah, I like how you put it, Malebo, because I've worked in the weight loss space for a very long time, and 5 or so years ago, I started re-examining myself, my work, and I said to myself, in this space, because my weight loss medication would be exercise and nutrition. So
Absolutely.
I'd prescribe how you eat. I would prescribe you exercises. I would train you sometimes. But I began questioning myself that when I look at the general stats around weight, are we actually scratching the surface on helping people manage their weight? We probably are not, because the cycle of weight loss and weight gain continues anyway, with all the knowledge, with all the access to everything that we have today. But then I realized that it's because we look at individuals with the same eye and we say, you all should be like Malebo. Why are you not like Malebo? Something is wrong with you. But Malebo comes from Uma wake no baba wake, who are different people from different generations of bloodline. Maybe Shaka Zulu was Malebo's great-great-grandfather, and therefore those nice, strong genes that Shaka is known for is how Malebo looks like. And a lot of genetics play a bigger role in people's aesthetics. And therefore, I then slowly realized that maybe we need a different message around how we apply exercise. Because one thing that for sure, when people come to gym and try to lose weight, to try and train and lose weight, most of the time they don't. But you don't because just the process of sticking to exercise and eating healthy is complicated if that's not what you were doing when you were a kid. And then you find yourself dissatisfied, and then you drop out, and then you just gain more and more and more. So it is then, I would say then, do you think it is important then to then individualize people, especially people that have obesity issues, just to individualize them in terms of how they approach their aesthetics? Look at yourself as an individual and have your own individual targets. And that way it's healthier for your mind, or it's a healthier pursuit for you. Would you think that would be?
Absolutely. That would be fantastic to individualize everything.
Yes.
because also, I'm so glad that you made that example with
Yeah.
me, using me, because
Yes.
I have been
Yeah.
on the chopping board
Yeah.
when it comes to how I look and everything. And
Yeah.
I don't do anything. I do not do anything. I'm even ashamed to say I exercise once a week,
Yeah.
sometimes once
Yeah.
in 2 weeks
Yeah.
or 3 weeks
Yeah.
because work and so many things. But people would look at how I eat
Yeah.
sometimes, and maybe we're going out for something,
Yes.
just to grab something. And Billy, if you are having a full breakfast, or and I'm just having a muffin or
Yeah.
something, and then you say something
Yeah.
like, "Oh, is it because you're watching your weight or something,
Yeah.
or you're trying to maintain your shape?" And I'm thinking, if you could look at my whole entire
Yeah.
bloodline.
This is how we are.
Exactly. So we need to try and individualize everything, and also
Yes.
look at the thought processes of this person.
Yeah.
Are you here to try and lose weight and work on your body because someone is pressuring you, or people around you are putting pressure on you? What are you worried about? Do you have evidence? Have you done any checkups, health checkups, to verify that your health is at risk?
Yes.
Why are you here? What is the intention behind it?
Yes. I like what you're saying. And still on obesity and weight loss. Have you heard of Ozempic?
Yes.
Have you heard of Ozempic?
Yes.
So just to give you a quick fact on Ozempic, it is so popular that it is in short supply worldwide. The company that makes it, it's literally their biggest selling product. It sells so much in the US and in the Western world, so much that even the value of the currency of the of Denmark has gone up because of Ozempic exports from that company.
Wow.
So the human nature always seeks the easiest solution for things, and I think in the reflection from an exercise practitioner, you realize that maybe this is why we have not, in as much as we now know more about exercise than ever before and healthy eating, the obesity rates have actually gone up. Do you know that obesity rates worldwide,
Wow.
especially since 2020, have actually gone up?
Wow.
And Ozempic potentially, and sometimes I'm sad to say this, potentially is the solution for most people. Yes, in the long term, we don't know yet how the long term effects are, but I mean, it's been around anyway for a long time. Because it was used as medication for people that are living with diabetes. So type 2 diabetics, Ozempic has been used for that. So the side effect of weight loss was observed from that. And this is how it was then redirected, or so sort of repackaged into a weight loss medication as well. So the people with diabetics seem to be doing okay, but a normal person who's not a diabetic, we still to see how in 10, 15 years, how that would affect you. But it is so successful in weight loss that a lot of even the public health systems in the Western world are considering it as having it as a sort of a form of a prescription for people living with obesity, because that way we know that when we control obesity, we also control a whole lot of wellness issues. So it means if a public health institute can prescribe Ozempic to its people, they will then have less people dealing with obesity, and therefore way less people coming to the hospital with
Wow.
obesity related conditions. Because I think one of the bigger things around obesity is that it comes with all these medical conditions, which in today's world, probably any health department, probably 60 to 80% of its budget is spent on dealing with things like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, strokes. So all the things that they deal with are related to obesity. So I would say people should look into that. They should look into Ozempic as a sort of a solution for most people. And there was a time where I'll be like, no, you mustn't take anything, just exercise and work hard. But nowadays I'm like, okay, maybe I need to rethink how I see things. And in the future of weight loss is potentially medication. And that's sort of,
Interesting.
yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy like that. Anyway, so moving away from obesity a little bit, We last week we had a very nice presentation with the Dr. Chetibi, the plastic surgeon,
Yes.
and I got to see the implants, which is quite fascinating. Uh, what is that about? I never get the psychology of implants. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I have in some form of implant, and unless it's medical, where your
Yes.
body needs it, why should I enhance something? Is that something that does a positive effect on your mind, or would I then want something more? Because I've seen people that are addicted to plastic surgery that literally have a fake everything. So fake chest. There's now muscles as well that can add extra muscles. That can now
Yes.
can give you a six pack. There's like literally you can fake anything. What's your take on that?
Billy, firstly, it's for me, it's quite controversial
Yeah.
because 90% of the work that I do is, to try and help people regulate, manage their mental system, their
Yes.
thoughts, their thought system. And I think for most of us, we don't realize that your mind, your body, your heart is connected. We don't see that connection simply because when I go back to what I said earlier, your mental health system is inside, it's within you. So it's like, what are you talking about? If I'm meant to try and listen to my
Yeah.
thoughts and realize my thought patterns. So that is, I think, the part that we need to emphasize. And I'd like to say that there's nothing wrong, of course, with implants. There's nothing wrong with doing any kind of work on the physical. However, you are solving one part of the problem, one piece of the puzzle. Because for people that go back and go back and go back, it means that the other parts of the whole entire system
Yeah.
are not resolved, are not balanced. And they continuously think, well, I need to work on this. I need to work on this one part. But you are a whole entire person with many systems.
Yes.
With many systems. So when a person, I'd like to say, ideally, when a person decides to do plastic surgery and do some work on their body, it means they have had the conversation with the other systems, the other two systems, which is your thoughts and your emotions. It
Yeah.
means thoughts and emotions are in place. And the body, the aesthetic, the physical part of it is just coming in as a support system to say, okay, guys, we are just concluding this. We are happy with this. We are content with this
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
So people never really check in with how they're feeling, why they're feeling that way. Why do they feel like they need to go get a lift, maybe, or a BBL or something?
Yeah.
And what does it mean for them in the long run? What does it mean for them now?
Yes.
What did it mean for them in the past? So they never really check in with that and they go for it. And months later, it's like, this is not good enough. I feel worse
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. Sure.
So we are one body with a lot of systems, and all those systems need to be in place.
Yes.
They need to be balanced.
I like that. I like what you're saying. And funny enough, I had a conversation with the doctor the other day, and she was telling me about how there's people that come for liposuction, and then it's 1 year down the line, they seem to sort of get whatever they got rid of
Yes.
through liposuction back. And then she would then tell them that, your lifestyle hasn't changed much. So it means it still comes back.
Exactly.
So then they should always be balanced in terms of how you approach any form of aesthetic look. There
Yes.
should be an outside. So aesthetics for you as a wellness person then means it's always an outside inside kind of a system that you have to manage,
Absolutely.
because managing just one part doesn't solve the other one, and you're likely to continuously have the same issues that you had in the past.
Yes.
Interesting.
It's like addictions,
Yeah.
I believe people never understand why a person cannot quit smoking and drinking and so on. But ask that person, Why? What happened when you started smoking your first cigarette? What happened?
Yeah.
What were you with friends? Did they, influence you to try it? Did you see your uncles, your dad,
Yeah.
whoever around you? Did you feel like you would be man enough
Yeah.
or whatnot?
Yeah.
Why? Because if that person reflects about that point, then he'll realize that, listen, I'm no longer a teenager. This is impacting my health,
Yes.
my
Yes.
relationships. So I'm no longer there. That means in the very same way I was able to say, I'm going to try this and
Yeah.
make that decision
Yeah.
mentally. It means mentally I'm
Mentally,
going
yeah.
to go back to the very same thought and adjust and say, I'm not doing this
Okay.
anymore.
Interesting. Interesting. You in your practice, do you see a lot of dark-skinned people? And I've seen this quite a lot in the hoods, growing up in the hood. Is there a complex among African people around being dark-skinned? Why am I saying that? Is because I know growing up, you would get teased for being dark, very dark. And as growing up now, we see that there's a whole lot of celebrities that have done this skin bleaching, like
Yes.
literally taking out your pigmentation. It's an unhealthy as anything, but people want to look like that, and it means something for them. Do you find do you come across a lot of people that struggle with being darker skin, darker pigmentation on their skin?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. As adults, Billy, there are a number of men and women that are still suffering from, what was said about the pigmentation, how
Yes.
dark you are, and not being able to fit in. And now they are adults, they're professionals, they need to be in these spaces, and it's really difficult. Some of them are not, they don't feel like, they are photogenic, they can take pictures and so on. And to me, I always base this on a historical point
Yeah.
of view, because we can't ignore that. We really cannot ignore how the very, very first person who felt like, listen, I'm too dark, was a person down the line in history, in the
Yes.
past. And remember that we as Black people were colonized, and the people that colonized us looked extremely light skinned or pale.
Yeah.
And they began to make it seem like they are the ideal human being. Aesthetically, they are, the most ideal people.
Yeah.
And not even aesthetically, even socially, economically,
Economically.
in every
In
aspect.
every aspect of whatever they.
If you are light-skinned, if you are pale, you can flourish in all these departments. So it started in that manner.
Yeah.
But what we also do not understand right now in this present moment in 2024 is the fact that traumas involving the body, involving aesthetics, involving how we look, our features, our appearance, can be passed down genetically.
Okay.
They can be passed down. They can be passed down because this is a thought process that affected your grandmother, your grandfather, and it was passed down to their children and their children's children.
Yeah.
So we need to understand what happened on a historical, social, economical level in the past that makes people today to still think, oh, when you're too dark, you are not smart enough, or you don't have this, or you can't fit in. Those people are still suffering from that stereotype that was played, that was influenced, in our people. So we need to go back. We need to go back.
So could we then argue in a twisted way and say part of self-healing for some of those people is bleaching their skin? Is it some form of self-healing, or is it just perpetuating the harm?
It's definitely perpetuating the harm. It's definitely perpetuating the harm because I think it goes back to the aesthetics. what is happening? What is the dialogue? What is the
Yes.
conversation? What is the communication they have with themselves internally? If they still feel like they're not good enough, or, this, and they're still thinking, even worse, when you're still thinking about how you were teased when you were a
Yes.
child, and those memories just keep popping up, then you are far from actually thinking that the bleaching will help.
Yeah.
It means that it's beyond the bleaching itself. So I think it really perpetuates the problem, because if you still have that dialogue, there's a lot that
Yeah.
you need to deal with.
So then, as a counselor, I come to you and say, I've been teased for being dark all my life.
Yes.
Or I've been teased for acne. I've had acne all my life and I've been teased for it. How do you then rewire my mind to then start seeing myself positively? Because this particular thing has been such a sticking point in my life, because wherever I go,
Yes.
everyone will look and point. And funny enough, though, moving into Santin, and in other societies, dark skin nowadays is like a premium. Like when you're super dark, it's like it's handsome and whatever, amazing.
Yes.
But anyway, so how would you help someone who's been teased about how their skin looks or how their skin appears?
So I think in what you said, the answer is already there,
Okay.
because the question is how.
Yeah.
How do I help someone that has been
Yes.
teased?
Yes.
So when that person comes in, we need to help them realize that they have been teased.
Yes.
So they were not born. Let me just say, that moment, Billy, when you started to speak,
Yeah.
as a kid, and you started to form your own thoughts,
Yeah.
and so on. In that very moment, I don't think you woke up one day and you looked at yourself in the mirror and you said, well, I have acne, I'm not attractive enough, or I'm too dark. Or
Yeah.
those are things that were spoken
To you.
to you. So the person who's speaking or who's saying those words,
Yeah.
also same situation. It's a cycle.
It's a cycle.
Same situation. They told him or they told her when he had that acne, or when he saw someone with acne being teased, that this is not good enough, you're not attractive, this acne makes you look like this and that. So whenever we are dealing with this, we help people understand that whose voice is that? Is that your voice?
Yeah.
Or is it someone else's voice? And how much information do you know about this person?
That's powerful, Malebo. Malebo, to close off, where can we find resources? We know that you're an excellent resource. Someone can come for counseling with you if they're dealing with whatever aesthetic issues that they might have. If they need to do some practical work, we've got places where they can go that we can recommend them. But where can one find resources that they can potentially tap to? I know your videos are really informative about a lot of issues on mental wellness. Where can someone find issues around the aesthetics and mental wellness, that something to help them read, watch, listen to help you deal with any mental struggles that might be related to your aesthetic wellness?
Great. So I don't know if people can access Psychology Today.
Yeah.
There's this website called Psychology Today, and I'm
I
also
actually
there.
was reading it. I read it a couple of days ago. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm also there,
Oh, lovely,
but that is a very good, it takes 3 minutes approximately to read up on wellness, body positivity, all the things that we spoke about. And if you are seeking someone who's going to help you, of course, if you would like me to help you, you can absolutely send me an email, malebo.mojanaga@gmail. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. Absolutely. Just type in my name. You can find me, and we can take it from there if you want to have a consultation, a session, and we can work on that. But Psychology Today is very helpful.
Resource,
They also have pages on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and it addresses all these issues.
Wonderful, man. Malebo, thank you. This is, as always, talking to you is like opens up my mind like wide
Thank
open.
you.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this session on mental. I think we're going to have quite a lot more because there's so many issues I want us to talk
Yes.
about. I want us to talk about drugs. I want us to talk about depression. I want us to talk about so many issues. And I want us to bring the controversial issues as well because I think
Absolutely.
we need to go there. We need to go there. Thank you so much. This has been Inside More Than Wellness with Malebo, our mental health expert. Until next time, have a good one. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.